Hi, I'm Jennifer Firestein, Associate State Director for AARP Michigan, and we are here with AARP on Tap Virtual. It's a live event. We started AARP on Tap in West Michigan to bring older adults together to stay connected. We know that when people retire, they lose their social connections and their social circles tend to shrink. And so we started AARP on Tap as a live in-person event, and we've adapted it to be a virtual event. However, we'll slowly shift back for those people who are in West Michigan to be able to come together for AARP on Tap in person. In the meantime, we do this event virtually. We have two more virtual events taking place, September 28th and December 28th, and we will share more details with you about those in the coming months. The benefit of watching live is that you get to ask your questions live in the Facebook comment section, and we will direct those questions to Tracy, our Cicerone, so we can ask those questions during tonight's presentation. There are two articles that I want to refer you to. One of them is an article on how alcohol affects us as we age, and then also a quiz on how alcohol affects your health. And those comments, or I'm sorry, those links will be provided for you here on our Facebook page. If you do the quiz, you get the AARP rewards points for it. And if you don't know what that means, go to aarp.org and you can click on AARP rewards to get signed up as a rewards member. So tonight's presentation on AARP on Tap is on perfect pairings. And what this means is, how do we match up the right beer with the right food? And so what beer goes best with pork or chicken or seafood or beef or a vegetarian meal? And how do we know what beers will enhance our food best? Ahead of time, we provided you with two documents. We have a beer and food matching chart, and then also a beer and food pairing worksheet. These will enhance your experience. They're not necessary, but if you can click on the link, or if you got them in your reminder email, we encourage you to review those, print those, whatever whatever you want to do with those, but it will enhance tonight's experience for you. So Tracy, our Cicerone, will walk us through tasting beer and the food together for the best culinary experience, and she'll even throw in some bonus content on using beer to cook with. So let me introduce Tracy to you. Tracy comes from a long line of craft beverage creators and enthusiasts. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, also known as Beer City, USA, presented Tracy with lots of opportunities to become a craft brewer. She joined Grand Rapids Community College's craft brewing program, and her internship took place at Beer Distillery, where she expanded her knowledge and skills of brewing craft spirits and beers. She graduated college with a certificate of craft brewing, packaging, and service operations, and she's a certified beer server from the Cicerone Certificate Program. And she's studying to become an even more advanced certified Cicerone. And Tracy comes to us tonight right here in West Michigan at Beer Distillery in the production room where all of the great action takes place in brewing those beers. So welcome, Tracy. And before you even get started, can you just give us a little background on what a Cicerone is and an advanced certified Cicerone?
Sure, of course. So as there are levels to, like mine as like a sommelier and the knowledge, styles, the Cicerone program is that for beer. So you start off as a certified beer server, which I am. I'm now going to be studying for my certified Cicerone. There's also the advanced and master. So it's being able to know all the histories of beers, styles, flavor profiles. The beer pairings is a good part of that program as well. So it's a really great program.
So you're basically a beer guru.
Yes, yep. So I'm still studying right now for my German styles of beer and my British and Irish styles right now.
Nice. All right. All right. So Tracy, go ahead, kick things off with perfect pairings.
Yeah. So thank you, Jen. So I'm here tonight showcasing a food and beer pairing. It's definitely grown a lot in the industry now that more of the breweries are opening up, the kitchens are getting back open. So I'm just going to walk you through the pairing that we have right now at Beer Distillery, and you can follow along at home. So we usually start off with, there's about 4 to 5 different settings in a pairing. I'm going to start off with the appetizer and work all the way up to dessert. So feel free to throw out any questions you may have in between those. Right now we have for our appetizer, you want to start off with something a little light. We have our cheese balls with a curry ketchup sauce. So the way we did our pairing here is we want to start off with a light beer that is going to complement both the cheese and the sauce. So that is why we have our New England IPA. This is our Captain Dave, which is going to be a lot more hazier, citrusy, hoppiness flavor profile. And the hops in it are going to match the intensity of the curry ketchup sauce. So the way I like to perform a pairing is you take a bite of starting the appetizer. Very good. Smoked Gouda cheese, cheddar cheese, a bunch of cheese sauces. And then you just kind of get that flavor profile in your mind, what it tastes like, if there's anything you would add to it or anything like that. I'd probably do the curry ketchup, get a little more spice to it, and then have a sip of the beer. So that kind of cleans the palate off. Then you want to go through again and have another bite of the food, whatever you want to start with, and then sip the beer like right before or immediately after, because that's going to kind of pick up more of the flavor profiles. So the way I have it is I'm going to do the curry ketchup, which is, it's a mild hotness to it, but it's not overwhelmingly spicy. Take a sip and enjoy. So the hop profile for the Captain Dave as New England IPA, as I said before, is going to be this really nice citrusy hoppiness to it. It's not overwhelmingly bitter, but it does have a little bit of a bite to it. So when it's paired with the curry ketchup, it enhances the flavor like 10%. So it's the part of the pairing is you want to do something that's either complementing it, contrasting it, basically making the flavors of your food and beer stand out together. So it's a really nice set. So you want to start with something a little lighter and then work your way down. So we usually do either in descending order, something that's going to like light hoppiness, more hoppiness to something extremely hoppy, or a light beer to way to a dark beer. So it's up to your personal preference though. Every palate is different, but so we start off with our vegan potato bowl. Usually in a pairing, there's the appetizer, and then there might be something like a salad or a lighter dish like our potato bowl. So this is going to be mostly vegetables. So it has really nice like sauteed mushrooms, carrots, pepper. It's going to be a little bit more earthy. So that would actually pair really nice with something like a lighter, earthier beer tone, like a Munich or something like that. But I decided to go with a blonde. So the blonde actually is a little bit more hop bitterness to it. And it's going to pair really well because we put a spicy peanut sauce onto our potato bowl. So that is going to pick up the flavor, and that's going to enhance the spiciness. If you have something like a curry sauce or something, the hop bitterness is definitely going to emphasize that. So you want to make sure that you don't have something that's really overwhelming or is unbalanced.
So Trace, I have a question for you then, as far as starting in order of the appetizers and then moving on to the next course. Should appetizers always be paired with the lighter beer? Like you said, you kind of start with the lighter beer and work your way towards the darker, heavier beers. Is that the way it should be when you're doing appetizers, or not necessarily?
So there's no 100% in a pairing. It's to the individual's taste. Like if you were doing this at home, you could have all dark beers if you like, heavy, maltier things. Traditionally, though, they are going to want to start with something a little lighter, either in hop profile or ABV. However, just because you don't want to overwhelm your palate as you're moving through the courses.
And then, so the first course you have is the appetizer. And then what is the second course that you mentioned that what did you call the second course then? Is that the part of the main meal?
Yeah, so this is, it's like a second appetizer almost. This is our vegan potato bowl. So it's going to be a little lighter, lots of vegetables. Otherwise, normally in a beer pairing, they might have like a salad or a really like light fish dish. So it's usually, again, working in intensity levels. So it will move up to something a little bit heavier at the end with like a main course and then dessert.
Okay. And you've talked about complementing or contrasting. And does that go for every course or just the appetizer course?
For almost every course, again, it's to the individual's palate because everybody's sense of taste is going to be a little different. Some people are going to favor complementary things, so something really spicy with something very spicy to drink, or something that's going to have more of that maltiness, bready flavor in a beer to a really nice like crusty bread or sandwich, things like that.
And so if instead of like the potato bowl, which is kind of like you said, a second appetizer, and somebody wanted to do the salad, would that still be a lighter beer, or could you match up something with the salad differently?
Depending on the salad. So normally, like any of the salads I've had in a beer pairing, they have tended to be on the lighter side. So just like regular lettuce, some veggies, and a lighter beer to go with it. Something like a pale ale would be good, or a Munich Hell, something very light, not overwhelming. I've had a cream ale that was good, or a very low ABV table beer.
Okay.
If you have a heavier salad, though, if it has like a lot of mixed nuts in it or protein in it, you might have a heavier, darker beer that complements the proteins. Or if you have a lot of like seeds, nuts, legumes in it, something that's going to be a little bit more earth tone, smoky beer.
Okay.
So, which actually brings me to the next dish, because this one is a little bit of a cheat, because this is our meatballs and mashed potatoes. And the chefs here have decided to make their own sauce with one of our beers. So this is actually cooked with our Maple Rumble beer, which is a darker, semi-sweeter, heavier beer. And the sauce that is left behind in the reduction is going to echo the flavor of it. So it's going to be semi-sweet. You're going to pick up hints of the maple. So we do either the Maple Rumble beer with it, or to give it a little bit more of a contrast, but still within the same flavor profile, an Irish Red cannot be beat because it's a very versatile beer and it pairs well with a lot of things. So the spiciness and sweetness of the meatballs is actually kind of cut down by the toastiness, roastiness of the Irish Red, and does a really great job of complementing it.
And as far as, so when people get to their main course, and we'll go through the chart after you're done with the foods that you've paired up, because I really do want to have you really highlight what's on the chart. So as far as like the main course, when people are eating, you provided meatballs, but people are maybe bringing fish to the table or chicken or a vegetarian meal. How much do those meals change what beers you bring?
Very much so. So something like a lighter meat, like if you have like a chicken or a fish, normally you're going to want to have something a little bit in a lighter style of beer, because it pairs a little bit better. It's almost kind of just like wine. You want to pair light beer, light wine with something a little lighter in dish flavor profile, so not to overwhelm the palate. If you get a heavier meat, like roast, darker meat, something that's been smoked, you want to kind of echo that the same way in the beer. You can do a darker beer with a lighter dish, or a light beer with a darker dish. It's a really great experimentation just to see what kind of flavors you can bring out of the dish itself. You can find out like how it was prepared, if there's a spiciness to any sauces or ingredients, things like that. So there's no 100% way of doing a beer pairing. But normally it's, you want to match the intensity and the flavors.
Okay.
So yeah, so if I was actually going to do this, I would say if somebody, it's up to the individual preference, but if somebody has more of a sweet tooth, I would want to emphasize the sweetness of the maple rumble beer in the sauce with the meatballs. I would recommend the maple rumble. However, if somebody wants to bring out, you know, we have like the earthiness of the carrots and potatoes with the dish and kind of cut through the seasoning, I would go with the Irish red.
Okay. So what's next? What's next on the menu here?
It's my favorite because, you know, sometimes you just want to skip to dessert. You're like, get the menu. These are all really good.
And I sometimes think you should start with dessert.
So this is actually our lemon tres leche cake, which we have on menu right now. And we did a really excellent beer. So this is our Essence of Violet. It's a blueberry stout. And I love this pairing. We've had this many times before, of where you get the fruitiness in the beer. The blueberries complement the lemon really, really well. It also has more of that chocolate and coffee flavor and profile in the beer. So that's going to cut through the sweetness a little bit too, so it's not as overwhelming. It pairs really nicely.
It sounds delicious. And I would start with probably the dessert first.
Looking forward to eating it tonight, so I'm just like, yes. So, so for dessert, again, match intensities and flavors. If you have something that's like really chocolatey, there are several great stouts that have great chocolate profiles. Or if you want to go a different route, you might match to the other end of the spectrum and do something really fruity instead. So like a strawberry and chocolate cake, or I heard that somebody picked up a strawberry wheat beer, and that would go really well with something chocolatey. Or if you want to match it to a strawberry dessert, that would work as well.
So really any type of fruit beer could go with a chocolate dessert. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much. If you want to just have the sweetness of the fruit, you do have to watch out for intensity though, because there are some beers like a barley wine that are very high ABVs. They have like high malt profiles, high hop flavors, that they would overwhelm a really delicate dessert. So you just have to worry about the matching the intensities a little bit, but pretty much almost weird. Yeah.
And when you say it would overwhelm it, how do you know if the beer is overwhelming it? What would indicate that?
So if you have, like, say you take a bite of your dessert and then a sip of the beer, if you can't actually pick out any of so like for this instance, the lemon complements with the blueberries and brings out more of the sweetness of the blueberries after you've had a bite of the lemon cake. If you tried that with another dessert and all you can taste is just the beer, there's no like enhanced profile in it. It didn't change the flavor of the beer from one sip to the next. That just has an overwhelming profile. It's too strong of a beer to match that dessert.
Okay, so so whatever you're pairing it with should draw some flavors then.
Yes, so they should you should have a complementary, spicy to spicy, a contrasting, something spicy to sweet, or if you just want to emphasize like the different fruits, like if you have a fruit beer and a fruit dessert, but they're two different styles of fruits, they would match really well, but still each have that flavor profile for you to taste.
Okay, all right. Tracy, we do have a couple of questions that came in. Carol is asking, when tasting wine, cleansing your palate matters. Does it matter for beer tasting?
It does. So between the individual courses, I have a glass of water here. I would just then wash out my palate a bit. It's not as strict as wine, just because you will probably still have like the lingering effects of like the previous beer you had, either through like a sense memory, because sometimes you can drink a certain style of beer and go, oh man, I had that a month ago when I was here and I was eating this course and I still remember it. And so your brain goes, oh, I'm still gonna remember this beer even down the line. Otherwise, just have a bite or two of the next course, drink of water, and it should not be as overwhelming.
Okay. And then Julianne is asking, what is the name of the dessert again? That fabulous
So
dessert.
it is fabulous. It's a lemon tres leche. So it has a lemon and milky white lemon base and a lemon custard. And then we topped it off with lemon zest and slice of lemon. So it's going to be very sweet and very lemony, which goes really well with blueberries.
All right, nice. All right, so let me ask you, with the food pairings that you have there, is there anything else that you want to share with the pairings before we move on to the next part?
Yeah. So while these are the beers that we do have on tap, we do have more. I picked the most, probably the ones you would mostly see. So something like you usually have a blonde at a distillery. You usually have some sort of IPA, a stout of some sort, and somewhere between like an amber or an Irish red. So, but always find something specific either at a craft beer store or local brewery. That's like way out of the world. We actually have a Miss Pickle beer on tap. So it's exactly what the name sounds like. It's a pickle beer, a sour-based beer that tastes like pickles.
Wow.
And we do individual pairings at home, and it is great with a grilled cheese and a bowl of roasted red pepper and tomato soup. So while normally, pairings can be made up by the distillery itself, brewery, or at home, I would recommend just grabbing something that you normally don't drink and trying that out with a favorite dish just to see what happens.
So I question, because we're talking about pairings, and if you have a pickle flavored beer, could you add that to a Bloody Mary and create a whole new drink?
Yes, we actually have that right now, Michelada. So it's our pickle beer, Bloody Mary mix, and again, it goes really well with the grilled cheese.
Wow. So you can actually even pair beer with other alcohols or other drinks to create something new then too.
Meads, ciders are great. There's a bunch of different flavored ciders that do really well. Meads have a wide range from either very dry champagne to almost something super sweet. Hard seltzers I know are a big deal. So yeah, there's a lot of versatility right now in the craft beverage industry.
It's a lot of fun. Sounds like it could be a lot of fun. So Marianne, we have a question from Marianne. She says that she could never have a beer for each course. So could you serve a flight of the different levels of beers?
Yes. So again, this is a traditional setup for a pairing, a different beer with each entree or dish. But we've had pairings before where you either have one beer for each entree, or everybody had the one main dish and they had 5 beers just to try that one dish with, just to see what they like better. So this is not 100% set in stone. Again, it's up to the consumer of what they'd like to try.
Okay. And Tracy, you're coming from Beer Distillery in Comstock Park, Michigan. Can you identify those 4 beers that you have provided and then the little bonus one as well?
Yep. So Captain Dave, which is a New England IPA. So again, more hazy, citrusy, hoppy flavor. We have a blonde, which is a little bit higher strength ABV. It's going to have a little bit more of a hop bitterness to it. And then this is actually mine. This is the Red Colleen Irish Red that I brewed. And this is the Maple Rumble. So this doesn't actually have a set category according to the BJCP, which sets the styles of beers right now. But this is going to be more similar to like a brown ale category. And then the Essence of Violet is a stout.
And Essence of Violet sounds lovely. Must have great violet undertones.
It is great. We picked the blueberries locally, so these are, again, we all try to get our ingredients fresh and local from Michigan businesses. So this has about 60 pounds of blueberries in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It has really nice.
So you have paired up some food options with beer, and I want to bring on John Zeman. He is one of Grand Rapids' lead volunteers, and he's actually the guru behind AARP on Tap and got it launched. And he brought his own food and beer, and I also have mine. But I want John, if you can bring John up, because I want John to tell you what he brought to the table and what he matched up for beer. And you can tell him if it's the right combination, you know, and just give him some feedback. So John, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. It certainly is a lot of fun to do this, and really appreciate all the information that Tracy's providing. One of the things that my beer and night is Sunday night, along with pizza. And I'm a pizza aficionado, and I even built my own pizza oven in the backyard. But I have different styles of pizza, and the style I've chosen tonight is a Detroit style deep dish pizza. I didn't make it since it's not Sunday night, but Detroit style pizza is kind of unique because it's made in a steel pan, and it's oiled, and the dough is put in flat, so it's not like a deep dish where the crust comes up the side. And what they do is put the cheese in the center, and then they have cheddar cheese that goes around the edge, and it really, because there's no side to it, it seeps down into the edge and forms this really nice cheesy crust. So I'm going to take a bite. Pizza is a little sweet, which I don't mind, with the pepperoni on it. And my beer of choice actually is a red ale. I hate to say this, but prior to being involved with AARP on Tap, Killian's was my go-to red beer. So I've enjoyed that. Let me just taste it after I tasted my pizza. Yeah, it's a little, I don't know. How do you determine if it's hoppy or if it's, what's the other term that you have?
If it's like more of a malt flavor profile?
Yeah. I don't know. But I don't think it overwhelms. I like it. But is that the correct style beer? Or should I be looking at maybe, I know that Founders has a beer that's called Dirty Bastard, which is a Scotch style ale, or a porter that Bell's makes. And I also have something from the North Coast Brewing Company. It's a Russian Imperial Stout. So any suggestions on one of the things also I've been curious about is temperature of the beer served. I know our refrigerator is a little bit colder than most, and if that really affects the flavor of the beer. Because I know in Europe, when I had a chance to go there many years ago, a lot of people drink warm beer, where cold beer is my favorite. So, and I've noticed, and Jennifer is going to bring up, and you're going to talk on this chart that has been provided, but there is a serving temperature, a thing which I had not seen before, and were not considered. So what do you think, Tracy?
Yeah, so Tracy, let me just refer people to the beer and food pairing worksheet. So as you walk through this with John, with his pizza and his beer, walk through this with John to determine if he got the right match. And then our guests that are watching as well then can use their worksheet with their own food.
Yeah, no problem. So you're going to want to start off first with your beer assessment. And again, it's to everyone's personal preference because they taste it different. But you're going to want to go through and go, okay, you know, this is this style of beer. I had it with this course at the top. And then go, okay, this has an overall intensity that's either very low or very high. So then it kind of helps you narrow down what you're looking for in that beer. And then you can go, if it's, you know, is it sweet? Does it have a hoppy bitterness to it? How's its carbonation? Carbonation can cut through a lot of foods and either lower the intensity or in some cases up it, depending on what you're trying. And then you go, is there like anything like with the aroma that brings to mind? Like, is it super fruity? Is it more of a smokiness to it? A little earthy toastiness? So that again is going to help you narrow down what you like in this beer or the several beers that you've tried. Then you can move on to the food assessment and how the intensity is then in your pizza, John. So is it something that has like a lot of like herbs and spices to it? Does it have a lot of veggies on it? Is the meat spicy, smoked, things like that? And then of course with the crust, depending on where the crust is made, is this going to be like a super bready one, semi-sweet, more like thick crusty? Is it grilled? Things like that will affect the flavor profile of the food. And let's go down. And then when you get to the taste the pairing, again, have a bite of the pizza, a sip of the beer, kind of mull it over. And like, if it's a great pairing to you, if you really like it, great. If you want to kind of expand, try either the one from Founders, one from Bell's. Maybe you might find a new one that you really like instead. But you can just go, okay, you really either liked it or, you know, you loved it. If it's a favorite comfort food, a lot of times it doesn't matter if somebody says, oh, well, you shouldn't try this style with this food. That's not right. It's really, again, up to you. So and then if you go down to assessing the interactions for the red that you have, so I figured that's probably going to be probably just on the right level, just because ambers and reds are very versatile. They go well with a wide range of dishes. So yeah, if you like your red, stick with it. But I would say I would almost think the Founders might be a little bit too high of an ABV for a Detroit style beer. It might go really well though with like say a deep dish Chicago style, just because there's so much to that pizza. If you have something a little heavier, you might want to have a heavier style of beer just to complement match it.
Thank you. Yeah, all the styles of pizza that you mentioned, I have made, and I can really tell the difference between the thin crust when I add, you know, certain ingredients like shallots or Italian sausage, mushrooms, those kinds of things on a thin crust. The traditional Chicago deep dish is really kind of heavy, and so I can see that maybe a different beer might work for that. But it's nice to know that with the different styles of pizza, that maybe you might consider a different or experimenting with a different style of beer, which I'm going to do now. You know, I hadn't really considered that in the past. So,
yeah, so I mean, if you have something that's more of like a little more of a thin crust, maybe a little lighter on the meats, it has a little bit more of like the veggies on it, I would recommend like say a Pilsner would be really good. That would bring out the crustiness in it, the malts in the beer, or a Kolsch. So I did track down because I had the pizza in mind. There is actually a brewery, Martin House Brewing, and I just had this yesterday. It is a space pizza beer. So they are actually making, basically, it's pizza in a can style beer.
Where is that?
Martin House Brewing. I got it from a specialty store. here in Grand Rapids. So it tasted exactly like mozzarella, tomato sauce, and it was spiced with basil. So,
oh, I love it.
And did it really taste like pizza, Tracy?
It very much brought to mind pizza. I'm not sure I would want to pair it with an actual pizza just because I think that'd be too much. But if you want something really new and interesting to try, yeah, there's some specialty beers out there that you can definitely push the envelope on.
So John brought his pizza. Obviously, the toppings that you put on the pizza will change the beer that you should pair with it. Is that correct?
Yes. So I mean,
Well, that
again,
and the crust style also, yeah.
If you have a meat lover's deep dish Chicago, that's going to be a lot different than, say, a thin crust. Like buffalo chicken is going to be spicy. You're going to want to pair that more with something hoppier than something heavy. Or if you just have a thin cheese pizza, I mean, you can pair anything with that basically and get really great profiles.
Right. Well, John, I so appreciate you bringing pizza and beer to the table, literally. And so, Tracy, you know, I have a completely different food pairing, and I brought a personal charcuterie board. And on it, I have blanched asparagus and dried apricots, cashews, a manchego cheese from Spain, almonds, and then dried cranberries. And obviously, again, just like pizza toppings, depending on what's on your charcuterie board would determine what you drink. So I went to Beer Distillery today and I picked up one of your strawberry fields. So I'm going to crack this open right now. And I just real quick question. So I have a glass. Is this the right glass to use for this, or is it best to drink it out of the can if you don't have the right kind of glassware?
So glassware, typically there is a certain style of glassware for each style of beer. However, if you don't have the right style, it's completely fine to pour it in. Mostly, usually people have like a shaker pint glass. So something like this, or it has like the straight sides. That's what most people will have, or most breweries even. Otherwise, you can drink it out of the can. That kind of keeps most of the carbonation in. And also you don't cross-contaminate with anything if for some reason like a glass is dirty or something.
So would this kind of glass be appropriate then? Would
be appropriate, yes.
Okay. All right, and this is a wheat beer, so your Strawberry Fields is a wheat beer. So I'm pouring this, and with my charcuterie board then, so I've got the almonds, the dried fruits, the cheese, and the blanched asparagus. What goes best then with Strawberry Fields, with a fruit light beer?
Okay. So since it's a wheat beer, it is going to be a little bit on the lighter side of both hops and malt profile. And the strawberries is going to give it that sweetness. So I would either recommend it with the cheese or even with, I think you said you had cranberries on there and apricots. So
yes,
I would try it with some of the fruit, the cheese, and then to contrast it a little bit, the nuts, because most of the nuts, if you get that like earthy tone to it, would go really well with something a little sweeter because they kind of level each other out.
Yeah, the undertones of the strawberries are fantastic in this.
Glad you like it. Yeah. So if you did have more fruit on there though, something a little bit more sweeter, again, it's just going to emphasize the sweetness of the beer too. So that might be too much, but yeah, the nuts, dried fruit, cheese, and then the cheese, depending on what kind, if it's going to be milkier, if it's going to be more of a cheddar or a little harsh, if it's smoked. So that can also affect the type of beer you'd want to pair with it.
So it's delicious with the apricots. I'm going to take a bite of the cheese with that. And the aroma of this is excellent too.
There is 1 pound of strawberries per gallon of beer. So you're definitely going to pick up on the fruit profile notes.
So it's interesting. The cheese does not draw out the flavor of the strawberries. Like I'm losing the strawberry flavor with the cheese.
So is the cheese is it a really milky kind of cheese, or is it a little bit on the?
It's on kind of a nuttier cheese.
Nuttier
and
cheese?
it's a nuttier cheese. And I was reading the packaging on it too, and they were talking about pairing it with wine, and they said with a red wine. Of course, they didn't mention what to pair it with beer. I think they should add that, but they said pair it with a red wine. So maybe a darker beer would be better with it.
Probably, yeah. So probably if it's more of a nuttier, I would go something with like an English brown ale. So that actually has the nuttiness and the flavor of the profile for the beer. So that would complement the nuts and, or sorry, cheese.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm trying it with the cranberry. It definitely draws out the flavor. I like the combination of the fruit with the strawberry undertones.
And then there also might be a difference, say, if you tried, you know, if you have the dried fruit versus fresh fruit, you'll still probably get that same flavor profile, but it might be a little more intense or sometimes even underwhelming.
So then with the nuts, what would you recommend? I have almonds and I have cashews.
Let's try the cashews, because those can probably be a little bit more of a saltier, right? Are they salted?
They're not salted.
They're not salted. Okay. They still might pick up a little bit more flavor though. There are like if you had a ghost beer, which is really salty. If you have salted nuts, that just drives up the intensity of the saltiness too. For the wheat beer though, that's probably going to either lower it to a really low level or just match it and balance it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a pretty good combination. So let me try the almond. And I do have asparagus. Would you not recommend the asparagus with it?
I would probably stay away from the asparagus. There are some beers that would pair well with that, but strawberry fields is probably not going to be one of them.
Okay. I won't taste test it then. I trust your judgment on that.
I mean, if you want to experiment too, I mean, you never know. That might be the next great profile.
Okay.
You get your fruits and your veggies in one serving.
I will give it a shot just to see if, you know, you talked about complementing and contrasting. Maybe this would be that contrast that, I don't know, works. So let's give it a shot and see. Not so much. No,
Yeah.
Not so much. No, I'll stick with the fruits, definitely. Okay. So a couple of questions have come in. Steve wants to know, you know, we're talking about like different pairings here. What your opinion of nitro beers and what you would pair with those?
Okay. So nitro is a little bit more difficult just because most of the beers I've had them when they're not on nitro. They're just on a regular CO2 tap, but then they'll come out with the nitro style of the beer. My brain just has the regular beers still in mind every time I try it. When I get nitro, it's just like, wow, this is the same beer I had. It's just, you know, a little bit more silkier and the mouthfeel on my tongue, a little bit smoother, but then it still has that carbonation level that I'm just like, I would just probably drink it. I'd rather drink it by itself than try to pair it with something, just because it's a little bit more difficult for my brain and my taste buds to come together and go, okay, this is a completely new beer, and we don't know how it's going to taste with a dish. So if I had to, though, I had a really good nitro chocolate stout at a brewery here in Grand Rapids. Actually, I would probably end up pairing that again with something like a dessert, just because, like a chocolate mousse, just because in my mind they would pair really well. That smooth chocolate nut flavor, and then it still matches in the intensity. It was a higher ABV, and it's probably going to taste great.
I don't know if there's anything that doesn't match with chocolate, quite honestly, but it's good to know that nitro beer will pair with that. And so Steve, going back to your question, so either do happy hour with your nitro beer by itself and then do dinner later, or pair the nitro with chocolate.
Usually, again, because of what I had on nitro, it was a chocolate stout. So, I mean, if you have something else that's on nitro, again, I recommend just try tasting the beer by itself and then get a feel and in your mind, you know, okay, this would probably pair really well with something either darker, heavier, just so the nitro would cut through on the intensity of the flavor and it's not super overwhelming. So yeah, I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna go out and try a couple nitro taps, and I'll come back to you on that.
That sounds good.
Be fun.
So there was a comment, and I'll let you expand on this. So Tom says he assumes that if you drink out of a can, that you would lose the scent aspects of the beer. Is that true or false? Can you talk on that?
So it's kind of true, yes, because for the styles of beer and the glasses is meant to capture some of the aroma profiles and like the harder beers. Like say if this was like our Essence of Violet is a stout, if it was like a barley wine instead, I'd want to have it into a goblet because it's going to be a higher ABV and it's the glass shape itself is going to capture the aroma a little bit more. So yeah, drinking it out of a can though is perfectly fine. Again, it's not going to taste, you know, bad per se, but you might not just pick up all the subtle nuances in the beer.
Okay, so I drank it out of the glass and I still have some in the can. So I'm going to taste it out of the can and see if those nuances are still there. I would say, interestingly enough, I actually like it better out of the can.
So again, so it might have been like, it's going to capture more of the carbonation, the flavor. It's still in the can itself. Once you pour a beer though, I definitely recommend drinking it, you know, right away. You don't want to leave it sitting out too long because then you're going to lose some of that aroma.
Yeah, but that's interesting, you know, and I would recommend that people do a little taste test themselves, you know, drink it out of the can or the glass. And what about the bottle? How does that change the flavor?
So depending on how it's bottled, you might see something that's in like a clear or green bottle. You run the risk of developing off flavors in those. If it's a brown bottle, it might not go as bad as soon. Again, you might lose some carbonation in it just because it's not completely, you can never completely seal something. Eventually it will lose flavor if you leave it out 6 months, year, unless you're cellaring it properly. I've had some wonderful beers that I've had bottled, and then I'll go back in 6 months and try like a vertical flight of it, the same beer after it's been aged, or they change the recipe a little bit, just to see if it has changed. Again, you want to try to get something that's, you know, they produced it right away. It hasn't been sitting on a shelf for 6 months. So yeah, beer or beer bottle versus beer can, again, that's going to be up to you. Try a couple of different ones, the same beer, different ways.
All right. So on my charcuterie board, again, I had asparagus on here, and Julianne wants to know, obviously the strawberry fields did not work with that, but she wants to know what would work well with asparagus.
Okay. So that's going to be a little tricky. It depends on how you have prepared it too, because again, if you grilled it, you might want something that's going to have more of a roasty toastiness to it. So something that's like a little higher malt. Again, Irish red is very versatile. That would probably pair really well with a grilled asparagus. If you're boiling it though, or putting a lot of butter on it, you want to match, again, you know, that flavor profile. So if it's something super fatty, you might want something that's more intense, higher hop profile that would cut through that. So I would try an Irish red, something like that. Maybe John has an extra one lying around to borrow, or maybe like a brown ale too.
All right, so red or brown. Give it a shot, Julianne. And then Sonia asked the question, we were talking about carbonation. She asked, does carbonation get in the way of flavor?
It doesn't so much get in the way of flavor as sometimes as it will either enhance or cut through. If you have something that's really high carbonation, such as like super pale ale, highly carbonated, and you put it in with something that's really spicy. Normally the hop bitterness would intensify the spiciness of the food, but if you carbonate it really well, there's actually a little interaction portion on this beer and food sheet that will show this is what happens with the carbonation. It would either balance it out or it's going to totally not do anything. Sometimes it's just like, wow, this is still really intense. Otherwise, like the beer flavor is carbonated and it balances out with something really sweet or rich in the flavor.
Okay.
So.
So Tracy, you brought that document, you started to refer to it. So walk us through this as far as the food matching chart and, you know, what pairs best with what, you know, as far as the suggested food, cheeses, just, you know, briefly provide an overview of that. And then of course, then there's the, you know, the specific interactions then with the beef or the, you know, chicken or whatever, and the beer flavors and the interactions with the foods.
Yeah. So, so this is, again, it just says it's a brief food, beer and food pairing. So this is not going to list every single style of beer, but like some of the most common ones, and then like the most common pairings too. Again, go wild, experiment, definitely up to you. But so again, it will show the style of beer, high alcohol content, the flavor, the color, and then like hop bitterness, and then what pairs well with each beer. So we have like a blonde here, and I paired it with our potato bowl because it's a lighter dish, but it also goes with like chicken, salad, salmon, again, a very versatile beer. And then like what John was saying, at the far end to the right, it lists, you know, the glassware and then the serving temperature. So mostly, again, like here in America, you're going to have beer, either you're going to keep it chilled in your fridge or it's just coming off a tap and it's cold. That might not actually be the correct temperature. You might want to let it warm up a bit so that way you actually get more of the aroma, more of the flavor profiles. And then like in Germany, like drink your beer really warm. If you set it out too long, you might actually lose some of that. But so, and then if you go down the list, it says, you know, this is like the suggested food for it. And then Jen, we have your cheese. So we might have to go back through and find your exact type of cheese, what would pair well with that beer. There's some really interesting pairings, and then it also shows off dessert too. So,
this is a very helpful worksheet, Tracy, just because the fact that, you know, it shows like the alcohol content, the flavor impact, the color, the bitterness, and it goes through the suggested foods and the cheeses, desserts, and then also even what type of glassware to use and then what temperature to serve it at. So this is a really helpful guide. And then as far as the other side of it, where you mentioned the specific interactions, can you refer to that? Talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so with like, so it shows the beer flavor, like if you have, you know, the hop bitterness, the roasted malt, the carbonation, and alcohol, those are definitely going to affect your profile for pairing it with the food. You want to try to get, again, to your preference. I prefer that it's balanced and not overwhelmingly like going, ooh, that's too much of a contrast to it. If you have something, you know, that's really sweet or malt beer, if you had like an oatmeal stout, say, and you paired it with a curry or something, that's going to probably balance it out. It's not going to be overwhelming in either the beer or the food to your palate. However, if you go with something that's really high, like in this hop bitterness at the bottom, and it shows that it emphasizes it, oh yeah, yeah. We had a triple IPA, and we paired it with a curry dish. And at the end of the meal, there was only a couple of us that were not going, oh my gosh, we need a glass of milk. It super intensifies the spiciness of the dish. So again, that's where you want to worry about matching. Or unless if you really want to do something contrasting and have your eyes watering at the end, yeah. So, but yeah. So you kind of want to, again, like they go down the list, you know, you match your strength with your strength, something light and beer with a light dish, something strong and higher ABV with a heavier main entree or something. Then you want to find harmonies, like a fruit beer is paired with a fruit dessert, or a chocolate stout paired with a chocolate dish. Those are both matching. But you can also find a harmony in saying, oh, this is something that's more of a coffee flavored beer, and we paired it with a fruit dessert instead. But it still tastes really, really good, and they both bring out the emphasis to your palate.
So the takeaway on this really is just experiment and have fun and try different combinations.
Yes. I mean, you can have a beer pairing that if you just want, you can go, I want to do a beer pairing based on ABVs and not have anything below like 5% ABV, or I'm going to do all barrel aged beers, or I'm going to do all beers within the color range from pale to only like a light straw and only have like something like this. So again, you can do almost anything with beer. It's such a versatile beverage.
So Tracy, in our remaining few minutes, can you touch on using beer in recipes?
Sure, yeah. So cooking with beer is great too, because again, like I said earlier, we have the maple rumble that we actually use to cook with our meatballs. So that, you know, enhances the flavor of the meat, gives it a little bit more of a kick to it. If you cook with something that's been barrel aged, like in a whiskey barrel, you're going to get that nice whiskey flavor in the food. One of the best things in Grand Rapids is when they have their chili cooking competition and for the breweries, and they all cook with the beer at their brewery. So all the chili has some sort of flavor of beer in it, and it's fabulous. You can do so much. There's several great books out there if you check with your local libraries on either cooking with beer or pairing with beer. So.
And right now it's barbecue season, and a lot of people will marinate maybe their brats in a beer. So especially in the summertime, I imagine there are a lot of great ways to incorporate beer with grilling.
I do a pale ale brat. We've had a couple of those on the grill, marinated in it, or spike it with chicken on the grill that's been marinated in a beer or two.
So lots of good options. Can you get it wrong as far as, you know, combining beer with a recipe? Can you ruin it?
I mean, again, you probably can, but it's just trial and error, because you can have a beer that you might really like by itself and think it might be really great in a recipe, and who knows, it might be. But if, like, say you have something super salty and you pour the beer.
I think we have lost Tracy there. Well, we were close to wrapping up anyways. So let me just close that we have 2 more AARP virtual events on tap taking place on September 28th and December 28th. And we will share those links with you so that you can register for those events. In addition to the AARP on tap virtual events, we also have a wide variety of other events taking place. You can find out about those at aarp.org/MI as in Michigan. We've got rhythm drum circles, we've got food, nutrition, health and wellness, finance. There's a whole wide variety of events that you can tap into virtually. So we encourage you to stay connected, and we look forward to seeing you again.